Hi, this is Rock. Are you spending too much time losing your audience because you're scrolling up and down or left and right in your Excel? What we're going to do today is talk about tips for while you're presenting your screen so that you don't lose your audience. There's a few different ways to do this. The first thing we're going to talk about is increasing the real estate that you have visible as you're presenting. So let's say that I have a sequence here of, let's say, 40 rows and 30 columns, and I hit enter. I'm going to go ahead and copy those and paste the values. So now I have this set of data. If I want to increase the visibility, I want to stop scrolling down to the bottom or scrolling to the right as I'm presenting. First thing I'm going to try is to get rid of the ribbons here. I'm going to go up and change this to show tabs only. There we go. So if I have to get up into the ribbons, I can, and there they are. But while I'm not there, it gives me some more real estate. The other thing is to collapse this formula bar, which I'm going to do by clicking on this caret up here, and that'll make it the minimum. Another thing I can do is select the columns and right size them by double clicking here if that's the size of your data. See how that really helped out. I'm going to undo that for a second though and point out that I can also scroll out. So if I use this minus sign down here, suddenly I have everything in view. This may be too small for people to read. Keep that in mind. But also there's a faster way to do that rather than clicking with your mouse over here. If you just hold Control and scroll with your mouse, that's a faster way, and you can kind of get that right sized by using the Control and scroll feature. But let's say you can't go that small. You have an audience that is having difficulty seeing your screen. One of the things we can do here is hide columns and hide rows. I'm going to pretend you've got certain data here. Let's say you have a few here that are this color. I'm going to choose this color. And let's say what you really need to be able to show is the purple and the green. Well, it's pretty obvious here when I do it this way, but one of the things to look for is columns that you can hide. Fastest way to hide columns is to select them, right click, and just say hide. And now you've got your purple and your green here. You can also do that with rows, selecting rows that you think you can hide. Go ahead and hide them, and then you can see the bottom rows here. Another way to hide rows quickly is to put in an auto filter. But in order to put in an auto filter, you need to have some column headings. So let me put in some fake column headings here. And then I'll put in an auto filter. And now I could just hide certain rows quickly. So that's one way to give yourself some more real estate if you know there's certain rows that you can hide. Another way to hide columns and rows quickly is to use grouping. So as you know, and we've talked about, and I'm going to go ahead and re-show my always show ribbon here, the grouping function here, if I group columns, the default if you group columns is that it puts the grouping minus sign to the right, because that's more what accountants do. But I tend to go in here and change these default settings by deselecting these summary rows below detail, summary columns to the right of detail. And if I do that, now when I click OK, whenever I put in a grouping, then the plus and minus sign is to the left of the column or above the row. The downside of this is that it does take up some real estate in the margin at the top and at the bottom, so you have to weigh that benefit. If I'm preparing a spreadsheet that I know I'm going to be sharing with people and I know what the audience wants to see and I have a particular configuration, I might record a macro that has me hiding certain columns and then put a little button for myself so that I can quickly hide those columns or rows using that macro and get to and from the different views that I want. Another thing that I might do is use the split screen. Let's go back to where we have all the rows unhidden here. If I want to see the top and the bottom, I can go to View and split the screen. This split screen can be anywhere I want to have it, but when you're over this section, it'll scroll, and you can be over here and scroll to the right. So this makes it easy to do things like select the leftmost and the rightmost by selecting the leftmost and then holding Shift and selecting the rightmost cell. And then same for top to bottom, hold Shift and you can select those. So when you have a lot of data, and let's say this is down at row 10,000, it can make it so much easier to have a split screen that you can get to the very end. Another way to get to the very end when you're selecting is to use Control Shift End, and that'll select all the way to the end there. When I do this, I usually don't have the screen split. I usually have a freeze panes up here. The pane's frozen, and then I'll select the first, then I'll hit Control Shift End, and that'll take me all the way to the end of the data that I've input. If I'm starting from the bottom, select the bottom rightmost one, hold Control Shift, and then hit Home, and it'll go all the way up to where the freeze panes begins. So if you find yourself scrolling left and right, up and down, and people who are watching your presentation, they may feel nauseous at watching all the scrolling or feel confused, a great way to reduce that is to use these tips for hiding and showing your columns. Next, we'll talk about, is your spreadsheet too detailed? How to put together a simple dashboard of your spreadsheet. See you then.